My friends, it is an incredible honor to stand before you today. Look around this room. Every person here is carrying a story, a set of dreams, and a private list of battles that no one else knows about. We often walk through life under the impression that we are static beings, that we are born with a certain amount of talent, a specific temperament, and a fixed destiny. But I am here to tell you that you are not a finished product. You are a living, breathing process. You are an ever-evolving masterpiece that is currently being painted by your own hand. Today, we aren't just talking about self-improvement, as if you are a broken machine that needs fixing. We are talking about the radical pursuit of personal growth, the conscious decision to stop settling for the version of yourself that is comfortable and to start demanding the version of yourself that is possible. Growth is a painful process. It requires us to shed our old skin, and that shedding is never easy. It requires us to look into the mirror and admit that the reasons we aren't where we want to be have very little to do with the world outside and everything to do with the world inside. We love to blame the economy, our upbringing, our bosses, or our luck. But the truth that will set you free, and the truth that will probably sting a little bit today, is that your life is a physical manifestation of your daily choices. If you want to change the harvest, you have to change the seeds you are planting. Let's start with the most basic building block of a human life, the habit. We like to think that our lives are defined by big moments. The graduation, the wedding, the big promotion, the sudden epiphany. But those moments are just the tip of the iceberg. The 90% of the iceberg that is underwater, the part that actually determines the direction of the ship, is your routine. You are what you do repeatedly. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Think about the way you wake up in the morning. Do you reach for your phone and immediately fill your brain with the anxieties of the world, the filtered lives of strangers, and the demands of your inbox? If you do, you have already surrendered your sovereignty before your feet have even touched the floor. You have trained your brain to be reactive rather than proactive. Most people are living their lives on autopilot. They are sleepwalking through their days, repeating the same patterns, eating the same foods, thinking the same thoughts, and then wondering why their lives feel stagnant. Breaking a habit is not about willpower, it is about identity. When you try to change a habit using only willpower, you are fighting a war against yourself. You say, I'm trying to quit smoking, or I'm trying to go to the gym. The word trying implies that you are still the person who smokes or the person who is lazy, and you are just putting up a temporary fight. To truly grow, you must shift your identity. You don't try to go to the gym, you become a person who values their health. You don't try to read more, you become a learner. Once the identity shifts, the habits follow because we all have a deep psychological need to remain consistent with who we believe we are. Small habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. If you can get just 1% better each day, by the end of a year, you will be 37 times better than you were when you started. That is the math of greatness. It's not about the 1,000-pound deadlift, it's about the 5-pound increase. It's not about writing a masterpiece. It's about the 200 words you write when you don't feel like it. We live in a world that is addicted to the instant coffee, instant downloads, instant fame. But growth is slow. Growth is quiet. Growth is often boring. If you can learn to fall in love with the boredom of the daily grind, if you can learn to value the process more than the result, you become dangerous. You become unstoppable. The biggest enemy of growth is the all-or-nothing mentality. We tell ourselves that if we can't spend 2 hours at the gym, there's no point in going at all. If we can't eat a perfectly clean diet, we might as well eat drunk all weekend. This is a trap. Perfectionism is just procrastination in a fancy suit. It's a way for your ego to protect you from the possibility of failure. But I am telling you today, be messy, be imperfect, be a stuttering version of your future self. Just don't stop. The person who walks 3 miles, even slowly, will always beat the person sitting on the couch dreaming about running a marathon. We must also understand that our environment is the invisible hand that shapes our behavior. We think we have more control than we do, but we are largely products of our surroundings. If you want to grow, you have to audit your environment. Look at your friends. Are they pulling you toward the future, or are they anchoring you to the past? Are they talking about ideas and visions, or are they talking about people and problems? You cannot expect to soar like an eagle if you are surrounding yourself with people who spend all day complaining about the wind. This isn't about being cruel, it's about being intentional. Some people are meant to be a chapter in your book, not the whole story. If you stay in a toxic environment out of a sense of misplaced loyalty, you are suffocating your own potential. Your habits are the architecture of your character. They are the small bricks that build the cathedral of your life. But even with the best bricks, you need a blueprint. You need a way to see the world that allows those bricks to stand tall. And that brings us to the second great pillar of our journey, the mindset. The way you talk to yourself when no one is listening is the most important conversation you will ever have. It is the filter through which every experience must pass. If that filter is clogged with doubt, fear, and I can't, then no amount of good habits will ever be enough to save you. We have to learn how to rewire the internal monologue. We have to move from a state of victimhood to a state of agency. Building on that foundation of action and routine, we must look deeper into the engine room of the human spirit, the mind. Your mindset is the primary operating system for your reality. You don't see the world as it is. You see the world as you are. Two people can look at the exact same set of circumstances. A job loss, a global crisis, a difficult breakup, and one will see a crushing defeat while the other sees a necessary clearing for a new beginning. The difference isn't in the event. The difference is in the interpretation. This is the power of the growth mindset. It is the fundamental belief that your basic qualities are things you can cultivate through your efforts. Although people may differ in every which way in their initial talents and aptitudes, interests, or temperaments, everyone can change and grow through application and experience. When you operate from a fixed mindset, you believe your intelligence, your character, and your creative ability are static givens which you can't change in any meaningful way. In that world, failure is a terrifying verdict on your worth. If you fail, it means you aren't enough. So, you spend your life trying to look smart and avoiding challenges that might expose your flaws. But when you step into a growth mindset, the world opens up. You realize that the smartest person in the room is simply the one who has been curious the longest. You've realized that effort is what makes you smart and talented. You begin to crave the challenge because you know that the challenge is the only place where the muscle of your soul gets built. You start to look at your brain not as a fixed vessel, but as a muscle that gets stronger every time you push it to its limits. We must also confront the inner critic, that voice in the back of your head that whispers you aren't ready, you aren't worthy, or that you're a fraud. We all have it. It is a relic of our ancient biology, designed to keep us safe and hidden in the cave so we don't get eaten by a predator. But in the modern world, that voice is no longer a protector, it is a jailer. It tries to protect you from social embarrassment, but in doing so, it kills your dreams. You have to learn to acknowledge that voice without obeying it. You have to learn to talk to yourself rather than listen to yourself. If you listen to yourself, you hear all the fears, the insecurities, and the complaints that have been passed down to you. But if you talk to yourself, you can command your spirit. You can remind yourself of your purpose. You can tell yourself, I am capable of handling whatever this day throws at me. I have survived 100% of my worst days so far. This internal dialogue is the basis of your self-image, and your self-image acts as a ceiling on your performance. You will never consistently outperform your own self-perception. If you view yourself as a person who struggles with consistency, you will eventually find a way to sabotage your progress to prove yourself right. To grow, you must intentionally raise that ceiling. You must visualize the person you intend to become with such vividness that your subconscious mind begins to accept it as the current reality. This isn't about wishful thinking or manifesting without work. It's about aligning your internal identity with your external goals. When your internal I am matches your external I will, the friction in your life disappears. You stop fighting yourself and start fueling yourself. Another vital shift in mindset is moving from the why me to the what for. Radical responsibility is the hallmark of a mature human being. When something goes wrong, the natural human instinct is to look outward, to find a scapegoat, to point a finger, to find a reason why it's someone else's fault. But every time you blame an external force for your situation, you are giving away your power. You are saying, I am a victim of this person, this system, or this luck. If they are the cause of your problem, then they are the only ones who can provide the solution. But when you take 100% responsibility for your life, even for things that weren't your fault, you regain the power to change it. You may not be responsible for being knocked down, but you are entirely responsible for whether or not you stay on the ground. Responsibility is the ability to choose your response. Furthermore, we must address our relationship with time and discomfort. Most of us are waiting for a moment when we will feel like it. We wait for the motivation to strike like lightning. But motivation is a fickle friend. It's there when the sun is shining and the music is loud, but it disappears when you're tired, cold, and lonely. Discipline is the only thing that lasts. Discipline is the highest form of self-love. It is the act of choosing what you want most over what you want right now. It is the mindset that says, I'm going to honor the promises I made to myself when I was feeling inspired, even now that I'm not. This is where true growth happens, in the gap between your feelings and your actions. If you can learn to act independently of your current emotional state, you have mastered the most difficult part of being human. Growth also requires a willingness to be misunderstood. As you begin to change your habits and shift your mindset, the people around you may become uncomfortable. Your growth acts as a mirror to their stagnation. They might try to pull you back down to the level where they feel comfortable. They might mock your new routine or question your ambition. Having a growth mindset means understanding that you are not responsible for their comfort. You are responsible for your calling. You must be willing to be the crazy one for a little while so that you can become the exceptional one later on. This journey is often lonely, but that loneliness is just the silence of the high altitudes. The air is thinner up here, but the view is much clearer. As we master this inner terrain, we eventually run into the inevitable wall. We run into the moments where our habits fail, our mindset wavers, and our plans crumble. We run into failure, and how we handle that collision determines whether our growth journey continues or ends in the wreckage. We must learn the alchemy of failure, how to take the base metal of our mistakes and turn it into the gold of wisdom. Failure is not the opposite of success, it is the essential fuel for it. We have been conditioned by a school system and a social media culture to believe that failure is a red mark on a permanent record, a source of shame to be hidden, or a sign that we should stop trying. But if you look at the life of any person who has ever achieved anything of substance, you will find that their path was paved with the bricks of failure. They didn't succeed in spite of their mistakes. They succeeded because they were willing to make more mistakes than everyone else. Failure is the greatest teacher you will ever have, provided you are willing to be a humble student. The problem most of us face is that we take failure personally. We let a failed project turn into the belief that I am a failure. This is a catastrophic error in logic. Failure is an event, not an identity. It is a piece of feedback telling you that your current strategy is not working. It is life's way of saying, not this way, try another. When you stop fearing the sting of failure, you become dangerous to the status quo. You become a person who can experiment, innovate, and persevere while others are paralyzed by the fear of looking foolish. If you aren't failing at least some of the time, it is a sign that you are playing it far too safe. You are living in the shallow end of your potential. Consider the process of biological growth. When a muscle grows, it must first be torn. You go to the gym and you lift weights that are heavy enough to create microscopic tears in the muscle fibers. That is failure. The muscle has reached its limit and it has broken. But in the rest and the recovery, the body repairs those tears and makes the muscle thicker and stronger than it was before. This is the law of the universe. Strength comes from struggle. If you avoid the struggle, you avoid the strength. If you shield yourself from failure, you are also shielding yourself from the only thing that can make you great. You must learn to lean into the discomfort. You must learn to develop a high pain tolerance for the ego. When you hit a wall, and you will hit many, the first thing you must do is perform an autopsy on the experience. Most people either ignore their failures or they wallow in them. Neither is helpful. Instead, look at the failure with the cold, clinical eye of a scientist. What went wrong? Was it a lack of preparation? Was it a flawed assumption? Was it a factor outside of your control? Extract the lesson and discard the baggage. Once you have the data, the failure no longer exists. Only the education remains. This is how you develop resilience. Resilience is not about never falling down, it is about how quickly you get back up. The world doesn't care how many times you fall. It only cares about what you do when you're on the ground. We also have to realize that some of our greatest failures are actually divine redirections. We often mourn the closing of a door because we liked the room we were in, without realizing that the room was becoming a prison. Sometimes we need to lose the job we hate to find the career we love. Sometimes we need a relationship to end so that we can finally learn how to be whole on our own. Growth often looks like destruction in the beginning. You cannot build a skyscraper on the foundation of a shack. The shack must be torn down first. If your life feels like it's falling apart, consider the possibility that it is actually falling into place. The final stage of personal growth is the transition from self-improvement to self-transcendence. In the beginning, we grow because we want to be better, richer, more fit, or more successful. That's a fine place to start. But eventually, you realize that growing just for yourself is a lonely pursuit. True motivation, the kind that gets you out of bed at 4:00 a.m. when the room is cold and your body is tired, comes from growing so that you can better serve others. When you become a person of high character, disciplined habits, and a resilient mindset, you become a lighthouse for everyone around you. You give other people permission to grow just by being in your presence. Your growth becomes a gift to your family, your community, and the world. As I close this speech, I want you to think about the version of you that exists 5 years from today. That version of you is either reaping the rewards of the discipline you start today, or they are paying the price for the excuses you make today. You are the only person who can bridge the gap between who you are and who you are meant to be. No one is coming to save you. No one is going to give you a map. You have to build the road as you walk on it. I challenge you to leave this room and do something difficult. I challenge you to audit your habits, to guard your mind against the poison of I can't, and to look your failures in the eye and say, thank you for the lesson. The journey of personal growth is not a straight line. It is a spiral that goes up and down, but as long as you keep moving, you are winning. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop waiting for the fear to go away. Fear is a constant companion on the road to greatness. Invite it along for the ride, but don't let it touch the steering wheel. You have the seeds of greatness inside you, but seeds only grow when they are buried in the dirt and forced to push through the darkness. It is time for you to push. It is time for you to grow. It is time for you to become the person you were born to be. Go out there and start building. The world is waiting for your best version.